Hi everyone, welcome to Tech Down Over. Today we are, well, let's see, I'm Zanotti, and Geoff couldn't make it today. He just couldn't do it. It was very early his time, and I think he's exhausted from work. He was sick last week too. So we'll probably see him next week on the show. But joining us is Harold Muliati.
Yeah, I am not Geoff Blanchard. I am Harold Muliati. So let's get going.
All right, here we go. And welcome back, and joining us in the center position of power, we have with us Leigh, also known as the SnapChick. And Leigh, how are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for asking.
I'm glad you could join us, and we've been fans for a long time. I've been watching you since pretty much you were on, since you started.
I
don't know how many years that is already, but you've been on at least, 6 years or more?
Almost 10.
10. Yeah, you know what? You've been on since we started too, about the same time. So we must have seen you since around. Probably saw you a little bit after you were on, then maybe 8 years or so. And you always have a great. That's why we always invite people that we think are just great, who do a good job. You're very professional. You're fun on the shows. And I don't know how you have the energy to do everything you do, because it is pretty amazing watching you climb up and down the Grand Canyon. And your last trip to Yosemite was rather interesting. That's when you had the bear encounter, right? Was that in Yosemite?
Yellowstone, yes.
That was Yosemite. Sorry.
Yeah, that was a couple of Yellowstone trips ago. Yeah,
was it really?
We ran into a bear. It was an interesting experience. I learned a lot about myself, and luckily I was able to take some photos of it.
And it's funny. You look at the picture of the bear. Look, I couldn't. I think it was a male. I think, but
you can't tell.
They look cute. They're cute. They look like they're cuddly, and they could rip you in two with no effort whatsoever. Now, I don't think those are necessarily aggressive bears, but you never know.
You don't, and we had seen him several times, and when you wind up with an animal that close, all of a sudden you realize your place in the world.
And I remember you turned a corner, and there it was. It's like, hello.
Looking right at us.
Yeah. And what were you, a group of about 5 or 6 at that time, or 4? There was another party, I think, was with you on that, and I was thinking, that bear was pretty cool because he didn't seem spooked by anything.
Yeah, at that point there were 3 of us, but we had seen him several times already on our hike back to the car, and there had been groups of people, and I think the bear was just curious about us.
And I wondered, does he get fed by people? Because people a lot of times feed wild animals that they think that's a good thing to do, not realizing the animal might look at you as part of the food too. And it's sort of interesting. I know out here, we're in Southern California. Camarillo is our area, and then Thousand Oaks is over us, and we've got a lot of hiking around here. And you have to be careful, but for a different reason. You could have mountain cats, not that often, but snakes, lots of rattlers. And I was going to ask you that because you do a lot of stuff in the Grand Canyon. I imagine a lot of snakes on trails and stuff. Have you ever run into that?
I've never seen a snake in the Grand Canyon.
Really? Interesting.
I have seen them in central Arizona.
Okay, yeah.
Plenty
a lot of times. Rattlers? You get rattlers out there too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All over the place.
But they usually just leave. They don't want to be anywhere near you. And usually when people get bit, it's because they step on them by accident.
Typically, yeah.
Yep. It's interesting.
Yeah, and that's when you have to be, you just have to be all the time paying attention.
Yeah. Now, how did you get into the world of photography and video and doing this?
Well, I guess it started out when I was a kid. I had this brick of a neon yellow camera, and I just thought that I was a photographer. And I used that as much as I could. I pretended to use it when I didn't have film, which was almost all the time because I never had money for film. And I just played with cameras and lining up shots and clicking the shutter release button and rewinding until probably when I was in college is when I actually kind of started to get more interested in it and wound up allowing myself to dive in.
I guess photography is actually one of those things where kind of pretending to do it is sort of valid as well, because you're looking at things and you're trying to figure out, how to frame it as a picture. So even if you're not taking a picture, it kind of counts as practice too.
Oh yeah, especially in the film days when you didn't have image review.
Yeah.
It was, what you got was what you got.
Yeah, true. And before we had, 256 gigabyte SD cards that you can just delete everything off of them and use them again.
Those are nice.
Yeah, exactly.
So much nicer.
There's a lot of rumors that 256 gigabyte cards aren't good. We've done hundreds of hours of shooting with. They're wonderful. We haven't had one failure yet. Knock on wood.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
No kidding. So far, so good. Never with a 128 either. I've had 64s fail on me, which is funny. You'd think they wouldn't, and I've had 32s fail. I've only had two cards in my life fail on me: a 32 and a 64. And it's like, oh. Fortunately, it wasn't anything really that important, but it could have been. And that was. I'm a little afraid with cards because they're not the most robust, and the QHD cards, they're a little better, but or XQD cards, they're not that used that often. So Nikon, I think, owns the patent to them. No, wait, Sony does,
yeah,
I think, but only Nikon uses them.
One in here.
Yeah.
They're definitely more robust than an SD card, though.
They are. But they're also a lot more expensive.
They are. That's kind of, I've heard a lot of people say that, but if you're considering speed and looking at like the new Sony Tough cards that are super fast, they're really not more expensive.
That's true. The Type 2 cards are still in the 200 plus range. And don't ever get a CFast card. My gosh, they have not gone down in $300-400 for 128 gigs sometimes. And I had one camera that had CFast, and it was fast, but it wasn't anything that just was out of the ordinary. And now all the people are really doing the same thing with really just SDXC cards, Type 2s. So, and really you can get away with SDXC Type 1s on 4K videos in most cameras without having to spend the extra money.
Depending on the bit rate that you got it set.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. So you started out as a kid, like a lot of us did, kind of looking. My dad was into photography. He was a lousy photographer, but he was into photography. He just took forever to take one shot. It was like, can't you just take a shot? No, the film's expensive. It's like, oh.
It is.
And it was. You couldn't do it. I love having photos now. It's great. You can delete half of them and maybe keep the other half if they're good. Life is good that way. But it's interesting. Once digital came in, boy, did photography open up for everybody. And of course, the big competition now is between what is a cell phone is good. And it's amazing how many people say cell phones are better than camera. No, they're not. The lenses aren't that great, they're getting better. But I don't know. What do you think between of that fight between cell phones and cameras?
Not never. Right now, you won't get the same quality from, your cell phone camera and the, Z7 that I just held up, but they are getting better and better. And I think that my cell phone camera gets more action than my other cameras, and this is what I do for a living. So
isn't that funny?
I don't know. I think it's a silly argument, really, because they're just two different animals. And if you're taking pictures, I think that's great.
That's true. Now, you are, I think, very talented in the things you do in terms of, I love the way you come up with ways to motivate people to take more pictures. You've been doing that forever. You come up with, this month is this thing, this month is... Oh. And, but it's a good idea because it forces people to think about it a little bit. And you do one thing I really like, too, especially in today's day and age. When you do, for example, the boudoir pictures, which are very sexy, they're very pretty, and you're gutsy, you use yourself as the model, which you can. Yes, I thought of using myself and thought, no, I would be hideous. It would just be horrific. So, but what I like about that style of picture, and this is something that today is taken so for granted, is that you don't show anything. You let people's imagination go. And to me, that is so much classier than the other approach, which is like, hey, it's like, okay, yeah, well, that's nice. And it's just a different approach, and it's a very classy type. And for one thing, it teaches people how to light very well. And that's one of the things you've done very well in a lot of your videos, is show people how to light for that kind of photography, which really teaches people how to light well, because you don't have a lot of light usually in those scenes, but the light you have is so crucial. And I just love the approach you take on those. How did you get into the boudoir photography, for example?
That's a good question. I think I started the channel and I tried to get models in, and sometimes I did get models in, mm-hmm. but I was trying not to spend a lot of money on, my models or really anything with the channel. I started out just with everything that I had available to me. And it was my husband that convinced me to jump in front of the camera and try out self-portraiture. I think at the time I was using the D300S. It was one mm-hmm. of the first Nikons that had the interval timer, yes, where you could set the camera up to take multiple photos in one go. So I could run in front of the camera and have it take multiple photos. So I was kind of testing that out in front of the camera, and then I don't know how I wound up in the boudoir style stuff. I think it was just something to try to kind of challenge myself, because I'm pretty conservative in real life. So I guess that's kind of how it started.
No, and I'm sorry, Harold, did you want to say something?
For the self-portraiture, do you use monitors and stuff like that, or do you usually just put the timer and get it to pose and then check it, and then it kind of adjusts
adjust in post?
My mic's off, sorry. For self-portraiture, do you use a monitor, or do you usually just uh-huh. use a timer and go and kind of adjust accordingly?
I do different things. So when I very first was starting with the D300S, I did not have a monitor. I set up auto area autofocus and crossed my fingers that I would be the thing that the camera got in focus. And it just through attrition, I would find several photos that would work. And then I just found tips and, tricks for how to make sure that I wound up in the frame. But then beyond that, using the new apps for the cameras have become incredibly helpful, because I can see in real time live view on my phone.
I remember the thing I used to do when doing self-portrait is that I would have a rock or something with a balloon tied to it, and that would I would put it about where my head would be, and then focus on that.
I use a light stand with a clamp from Home Depot. Or maybe, something, if it's on, for boudoir photography, if I'm on a bed or something, I'm trying to balance things up to focus. Right. But yeah, it can be a challenge. But thank goodness for how the apps are finally getting to be usable, where you can focus on yourself, you can touch on your screen where you want to focus, and I can see, in real time feedback for, camera settings and my position and all that.
Yeah. Well, because we use the, I think Rick mentioned, it might have been pre-show actually, that we use the GH5s a lot here, and yeah, I really like the app for that. It's so useful.
They have maybe the best app in the industry for phones. They have a really good app. The Canon apps are this side of crummy, and the Nikon app is non-existent when we were looking. I had a D750 Nikon, which I loved. I actually loved that camera to death, and sold it. And people were like, how'd you sell it? You loved it. Because I don't want to get into the Nikon world. It's nice, but it didn't do it for me. And plus, we did video more, and the video wasn't as good. But for pictures, that's D750 was, awfully good. I had a DA10 too, which I liked, but it was heavier than what I wanted to travel with. and we're talking plane travel. So I was like, I don't want to take this. It's going to cost more than I want to. And I'm a big guy. I'm 6'2". I'm 225 pounds. I can take all this stuff, but it's like I go with my wife who's 5'1" and not big. And I go, no, I don't want her carrying it. And I don't feel like carrying it. I've already got enough other stuff. And we've done corporate videos where we used to take the gear with us. We ship it now. It's so hard to go on a plane carrying 5. I mean, we're checking in 4 bags and 2 are with us. And it's mind-boggling how many things can fall over on you. Because pushing cars across the street, pushing carts, no, not fun. But I liked the Nikon. I thought they were really nice, but didn't get into it. And I was going, darn. My dad loved Nikon when I was growing up. And they're great cameras. I guess I started with Canon, still shoot a lot with Canon. I have the new EOS R, which I like. I don't know if I love it, but I like it. It's a good start. I think if they continue with it, it'll only get better. How do you like the Z, though, the new Nikons? Because at first everybody panned them. A piece of junk, this, that. But nobody had ever touched them. Now they're saying,
was like this huge hate train.
And now they're saying, hey, this is a great camera. What do you think?
I think the bottom line is that there is no bad choice on the market today.
You're right. Yep.
It just depends what you like in terms of ergonomics, in terms of menus and terminology. If you're into color science and things like that, there's differences amongst the brands.
Yep.
But I just don't think there's a bad choice on the market today.
No, I think you're right. And I love all these wars that go on the internet of, who's right, who's wrong, what camera's good, what camera's bad. They're all good and they're all bad sometimes. It just really depends on what you're shooting. And,
it depends on the person.
And it depends on the person, too, because one person's bad camera is another person's wonderful camera.
I guess it's the same for a lot of different industries and types of products. The biggest haters are the fans.
Yes.
They always find the most things to... Well, it's because they're more familiar with it, I guess, and they just.
Now
so they know what they want, and if the company didn't deliver exactly what they wanted, they're disappointed.
Exactly.
And you've done some shooting with Sony too, right?
Oh yeah, I've used a lot of the brands at this point. Yeah. I have not used the R at this juncture, but it's something that I'm interested to try.
It's an interesting camera. There's one thing that is new on it, which nobody really has, and everybody pretty much hates. I think I'm in the slightly hate category on it, and that's the little sliding multifunction slider. It doesn't work well, and I bet you it works differently on everybody's fingers, depending on how dry your finger is, how hot it is, how cold it is. They didn't think about that. They really didn't consider the ergonomics and the different body types that everybody has. And it's funky because it doesn't always react when you think it does. So you can lose a lot of shots if you're just strictly focused. Let's say you put your ISO there. Good luck. You're going to get it sort of. We finally did it to the point where it just functions. If you take your finger off it, it doesn't turn itself off. It's on all the time, and we just leave it there and just don't put your finger on it. And that works pretty well. The adapter, the converter that has the adjustable dial, you can put ISO on that too. You could put anything on that one, and that gets rid of the other back problem. So it's kind of overkill, and it was an interesting idea, but it didn't quite work well. At least everybody I know who has one is complaining about the same thing. The pictures are beautiful. The color is really nice. Video is okay if you like 4K with humongous crop. I don't care about 4K that much. We can edit in 4K. We have fast computers, blah, blah, blah. But we still shoot a lot in 1080 because that's where the audience we teach, we're going into training with what we do. They don't need 4K video. It would be too big, and they're looking at it on laptops.
In a lot of cases, it's quite a bit below 1080 as well.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. Yeah, we shoot at 1080 though, but the video might wind up at 720p. That's pretty common. And occasionally we go to 480p, and it's like, oh,
and
it's
invariably
really
viewed on Internet Explorer.
That's not talking about internet.
Yeah, I think that's such an important thing to remember when watching YouTubers or whatever expert that you're watching or listening to is that how they use the camera and how they want to use the camera is not always how everyone else wants to use the camera.
That's
so
true,
just
yeah.
because you need 4K at 60 frames per second, it doesn't mean that everybody else does.
No. And it's just interesting because everybody thinks you need 4K at 60p. Why? You don't need it for everything. It's nice, but it also takes up a lot more room. And especially on some cameras, you know, Canon codecs are getting better. They're starting to do MP4 and some other stuff. But when you start going into, you know, some of the other, you know, motion JPEGs, it's like, oh gosh, what were you thinking? You know, with the Canon, what is it, 5D Mark IV? It's a great camera. It takes good pictures. But if you do 1 hour of video, that is 255 gigabytes of data. That's huge. And the 256 card won't do it. So you can't shoot an hour of video with one card unless you can get a 512 card. There are some of those out there, but they're really expensive. And I don't know how good they are. But it's a lot of video editing. Then even your machines that are fast, no matter how much memory you have, are struggling a bit with it.
They will get bogged down.
Yeah, no matter how fast the machines are. And we use like really high-powered Windows machines. I mean, they're all video editing machines. Everything's SSDs on them. They're expensive. And we're using Alienware's Area 51s.
Oh.
I think the R5s, they're like $6,000-7,000, but they're fast. And then the other ones we build ourselves, and they're about equivalent. And it's amazing what they can do, but even putting some of this stuff on can be bad. Though rendering is really quick on them. That we had to render one time. It was a 90-minute file done in 1080p, and we had to get it down to 720p. Or was it 720 or 480? We had to do two versions. One was 720, and we went, well, this is going to take a long time to render. So we put it in on one of those machines, and we rendered it. Actually, no, this is on the machine that Harold now has. It's a Corsair body with everything, you know, water-cooled everything, and it just runs fast. It took 90 seconds. And we're just like, 90 seconds? Oh, man, it didn't work. I was convinced it blew up. And I'm looking at it, it worked, and it's perfect. Oh, my gosh. We couldn't believe it. I mean, we're used to, like, if you get runtime speed, that's pretty good. No, this was, wow. So you can really render fast nowadays, but some things in editing, especially if you're doing anything complex or After Effects, good luck. It can take a long time still, especially 3D stuff. But anyway, getting off topic on that.
I kind of like it because that's my break time.
Yeah.
If I have a video, you know, running through compressor, because I use Final Cut Pro.
You're doing Final
Cut. If I have a video
yep.
running through compressor, I can go for a run or something.
That's true. That's true. You know, I love Final Cut, but I don't want to use Macs anymore. They're just too slow for us. I mean, they're not bad, but they're a little slow compared to some other machines. Now, our Macs admittedly are 3 years old, so they're not the fastest or the newest ones, but they're a little slow on some things. And we also, well, we put bigger monitor. We have 32-inch monitors on most things, but I like Final Cut Pro. It's so visual, and that's what I think they really hit it on. That I just wish they would go to Windows with it. They could, but I don't know. Maybe it'll happen one day. There's a lot of rumors that they want to get rid of hardware. I don't know. Maybe. They don't make all their money on hardware anymore. They make it on hardware, but it's mostly phones and tablets. But the machines aren't selling what they used to. So I don't know. I know in our area they've closed 2 Apple stores down. We're like, ooh, that's not good. But They opened a really big one. They made like one that was like 4 stores combined. It's huge. That was in Thousand Oaks. It's a really big store. So I don't know. I don't know what their strategy is right now. There's a lot of rumors, but who knows? They're good
I don't
machines.
pretend to even guess.
No, it's hard. But I like it's a good OS and it works well. Windows is okay when they don't mess with it, which they're starting to really screw with it a lot. We have a lot of audio issues on Windows.
One thing on Mac that I've heard is pretty good for photographers, video editors, artists, that's other kinds of artists, is Apple Script. Do you have experience using that to like automate stuff or?
I don't.
I don't either.
I have said that I'm going to automate a few parts of my workflow, like when I create books. and it's just finding the time to
Right.
learn how to use
Yeah.
it.
And AppleScript's not too hard, but it's just hard enough. You just have to know enough to get into that. Have you tried Luminar?
I haven't, but I recently was talking to Ted Forbes
Yes.
at the Art of Photography, and he is just
He loves it.
saying how wonderful it is.
Yeah. And
So
I got it
keep
about,
saying I'm going to try it.
I got it about 4 months ago. It's nice. I was never a huge what is it? That's how much I like it. Help me, Harold.
Huh?
Photo editing.
Oh, wait,
Adobe.
Luminar is, which one is it again?
Adobe. What's the Adobe one?
Is it Lightroom, you mean?
Lightroom, geez.
Because Luminar is for the, that's for color correction and grading?
It does what Lightroom does. Maybe some other things, and it works on Mac. It works on PC. It's nice. It's almost like an app in some ways, but then you have power to really get into it. So it's a pretty nice. So they use a lot of AI in it, which is very interesting. Some of the scenes you get, especially you do a lot of landscaping. Oh, I think you would love it for the landscaping. They have so many AI things that landscaping can benefit from. You just go, wow, that's amazing with that. I mean, I don't know what corner you're in terms of, do you only take it or do you process a lot afterwards? Because some people think if you process it's still just as good whether you just process or whether you don't process. It's just what you want. But processing really makes things stand out sometimes, which makes them interesting.
Yeah, I think I'm somewhere in between because I am a lover of nature and I do want to bring people along with me on these adventures and to these wonderful places like the Grand Canyon or Yellowstone. And I don't want to almost betray what I'm seeing or what the beauty actually is. Yeah. But yeah, I will, go in and make things pop a little bit more or shoot in JPEG and not do anything. It just depends on the day.
Now, I remember years ago you did one of the Grand Canyon hikes and you were starting to feel dehydrated. I remember that one. And you were going, I'm really feeling dehydrated right now. And that's a tough one. I don't remember exactly what you did. You had enough water, but not that much. Or you didn't expect the heat to be what it was. It was just one of those days. The Grand Canyon's tough. Like you mentioned on some shows, it's over 6,000 feet at one point? Or there was one you were talking about.
The elevation.
And even though you're hiking up that way, it comes upon you fast that, I'm a little short on breath.
Yeah, it's a mile of elevation gain from the river to the South Rim. And at the South Rim, it's escaping me right now, you're somewhere in between 7,000 and 8,000 feet. Yeah. So, in between the dry desert and it being hot a lot of the time of the year, you can get yourself into trouble.
Yeah.
There is water. Depending on what trail you're on, there is water most of the year if it's not broken. But yeah, I mean, I've hiked that canyon a lot, and there is one time in particular that I don't think I filmed it, but maybe I talked about it afterwards, that I did actually get myself into a little bit of trouble and scared myself a little bit. It was kind of like the time with the bear, like, oh, I'm not infallible.
Yeah.
I may have been here a million times before, but it's different today.
Now, do you do any special training to do the hikes? Because you do some pretty hectic hikes. Hikes, they're not simple. You go from simple ones to pretty complex, rough ones. Do you do any special training, lake training, anything to keep you going? And I think you mentioned before on some of the shows that you're a vegan, which means you got to work doubly hard to get that protein energy, if you will, into you. How do you handle that?
It's not as tough as people think that it is, but I generally just try to get a variety of foods. I know what's in my foods, so I know what has protein in it. I know kind of how to combine things to get a complete protein, and I eat a lot of fruits and vegetables, and it pretty much takes care of me. And I listen to my body and what it needs. But as for training, I just stay active. I run, I hike. I'm in northern Arizona right now at, 7,000 some odd feet. If I look
Are you in Flagstaff?
If I look at my altimeter, and
is that Flagstaff
I just
area?
take care of myself.
Is that the Flagstaff area?
Yes.
Yeah, that is pretty high up there, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've never been there. I heard it's gorgeous. So one day.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
I've been to
It's a good
Phoenix,
little
but I
trip
haven't been
with,
anywhere else.
The Grand Canyon.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, that sounds beautiful up there.
One of your series that I really like is actually your basic camera tutorials, like just kind of the basics of photography. Because there's a lot of tutorials out there that are just kind of too, there's too much chaff to it. But I like that. I like that you just chunked it into these. Well, I think they're all 3 minutes, and it's each topic is just sort of the very basics of photography. But that kind of leads to my question. What would you say to someone starting out with photography just now? But what would you give them that you wish you had known when you were starting out?
I think I would say that don't worry so much about your gear. Don't worry so much about what the rules are. Don't worry so much about getting it right. Don't worry about making yourself use manual. Take pictures and figure out what you like and go with it.
Don't worry, be happy.
Pretty much. And
It's
I know
true.
I'm such a hippie for saying it, but I studied art history in college, and I think all of that study of art taught me was the rules don't matter.
Yeah.
No, it's true. Yeah.
Because I'm an oil painter, and what I like to tell people is that people when they're learning to do whatever kind of art, then people a lot of times will worry about how am I going to form my style? What's my style going to be? What will be my signature look? And I tell them, you don't develop a style on purpose. It's inevitable. You just keep doing it, and heck, you just keep exploring, and eventually you'll pretty much just accidentally lock yourself into a style.
Now,
Yeah, pretty much.
I have a question for you, especially for people who do landscape photography, and I don't really. I think Harold does a little bit of it, though I shoot whatever I can shoot usually, and sometimes it's landscapes. How do you handle heat, for example, with the cameras? Because we've had, with camcorders, when we've done corporate videos, we've been out in, for example, Palm Springs, summer, and we're at 125, and the camera goes, dying. I mean, literally, you get the alarm on the camera, it's dead. Mm-hmm. And we had to put cold towels on the camera and go indoors, because at that point, outside, we were 105 at that point, and we had to stop. The camera couldn't handle it anymore. How do you handle it, like, for example, when you've gone in summer to the Grand Canyon or even other places, when it is, and also cold. Cold also affects cameras. What have you run into?
I've run into things dying on me in the cold and the heat, but I'm lucky enough to make my own projects, so I can work around the weather. I know what works through trial and error, and if I need to not shoot in the middle of the day, I won't. Usually with still photography, though, it's not that much of an issue. I mean, I was just at Yellowstone in the winter. It was well below freezing, and the gear was fine.
Okay. So we run into it more because we probably use more camcorders for stuff like that. And
Yeah, video is where you really run into trouble, and I just stay away from it. But I would say that things have gotten a lot better over the years.
They seem to, though I still get nervous with camcorders. They've gotten better. They all have fans on them now.
Yeah, some of them have some pretty big fans on them too. Like the one Rick's on now, the XF405.
Oh, this is an XF405.
Yeah, it
which
seems
is
like
a Canon,
half the body is its fan.
and there's a fan on it, and it's like, really? But that's for 4K, which is funny because Sony doesn't need fans. Though Sony had, I think, a fan on. We had a Sony camcorder, and that one we actually sold. It was a shame. I liked it, but we didn't have the controls we wanted physically on it. It got in the way, but it shot beautiful video. And what's amazing is they can shoot with full light behind you and you come in clear. That's amazing that they can do that without any lighting.
The Sony A9 was just incredible.
Sony A9 was incredible. That, again, we sold that one and went.
You got like almost no bloom when. Yeah, I shot Rick. He was, there was really bright light behind him. There was hardly any light on the front of him, but there was very little
clear.
bloom. Totally
clear. Scared the camera, but it was clear. Well, we've got a couple more minutes. We started a tad late, but what do you see as some of the... Oh, by the way, talking about what Harold just mentioned about your short tutorials on exposure, on ISO, on shutter speeds and how they affect... They are really good tutorials. I was going to bring that up too.
Thank you.
There's a lot of people doing tutorials, but not everybody does them well. And you do a really good job. You don't beat it to the ground. They're clear. They're to the point. And if you go to the SnapChick channel, if you're watching, she has a lot of playlists of the things that she's done.
Yeah,
and there's one dedicated to tutorials. And
we will,
take a look at that. It's really good. Yeah, if you want to learn some good stuff, they're there.
Because I gotta say, there's a lot of tutorials out there that I start watching, and a few minutes in, I'm like,
yeah, it's good.
It's good to get to the point.
Well, anyway, Leigh, it's been a real pleasure having you on. We're fans. We've enjoyed the work you do, and keep up the good stuff because it's always good. And I know lately Raymond's been doing videos, and tell him. Thumbs up from all of us. He does a good job. We really like the work he's doing.
Yeah.
So, and I think you've done a couple together, right? Not a ton, but you guys should. You'd be the next Tony Northrup.
I have to wrangle him in. Actually, tomorrow we're going on an adventure. So.
Oh, cool.
Next week.
You guys could be the next Northrups. Because now you guys are really
you're
personable.
In Arizona, you need to learn to lasso.
Learn to lasso.
That would be interesting.
And take pictures of it.
And take pictures at the same time, right?
Yeah. Maybe I'll just take pictures of someone else lassoing.
Oh, that's funny. But anyway, no, he does a good job too. So you guys make a good working couple. So it's always nice to see that too. I always joke with my wife because she's not really into cameras, and I say, okay, now hold the camera, and I go press the shutter. Where's the shutter? It's the same place it was in the other 10 cameras. Okay. She's just not into cameras. She goes, I don't care about photography. Okay. But she's actually not bad at the eye. She can frame well, but she just doesn't get the mechanics of it. I go, don't worry about the mechanics. Just hit the shutter. And
yeah, it's good and bad that we have the same passion because we have a lot of cameras.
Yeah, I can imagine.
A dangerous addiction.
It is a dangerous addiction sometimes, and we've stopped. We bought some this year. We did. Well, last year we bought the EOS R. This year I don't think we bought one. Right? We did. We bought the big camcorder.
That's right.
But we haven't bought any new cameras for a while, and I think we're holding off to see what's coming up.
Rick, you had that video. I think that was a Tech Down Over you did a while ago about gas.
Gas. Oh yeah, we did one on gas. The gear acquisition syndrome. Mm-hmm. It was bad.
It's an affliction.
It was really bad. I mean, I've been through it. When you go through like 2 full camera lines and sell them off, you've got a big problem. It's just really it's not smart.
Problem, passion, it's debatable.
Yeah, but it sure is fun. It is fun. Getting a new camera is just a thrill. It's like, wow, what's this one going to be like? And they are very similar, but they're also different. And that's what can get you in trouble, though. When you're so used to one camera, you go shooting for real, and you're like, oh, man, how do you do this one? I have one problem.
You push a button thinking.
My problem is I have bad eyes.
Yeah.
I can't read half the menus. They're so teeny now. It's like, what happened to bigger fonts? Yeah. Canon used to have 3 font choices: small, medium, and large. Not anymore. So I struggle through that. I usually ask Harold if we were doing something. What does that say? Or my wife reads it and I shoot. It's really pathetic. But because I don't always want to wear glasses to read while I'm shooting, because then I can't. It makes what's distant blurry, so it's not good. Mm-hmm. But anyway, well, Leigh, we really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me.
We've got links to your website and your YouTube below, so people can. If people want to get a hold of you, what's the best way? Down through YouTube or the website?
YouTube is as good as any.
Okay.
You can find me pretty much anywhere just by searching for SnapChick.
Sounds good. That's a good name too, by the way, SnapChick.
Thank you.
Yeah, nice and catchy.
It's cute, and it's short, and people remember it. Anyway, we appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on. I hope we'll have you on again another time. We can talk about some other things. We're only tapping the surface of little things. We didn't get too much into anything, just to get to know you a bit. And we appreciate it again. And have a great weekend, and we'll see you soon. And please subscribe and go follow her stuff. She's got great work. Thank you much. Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye, everyone. Thank you.
And it's a wrap.